Welcome, everyone. I wanted to discuss the shape-shifting through different timelines, and with all the timelines available, how we can access different timelines and evacuate from others. So basically, currently we are existing in the now moment, or as others may say, the present moment. And what that is the current moment that exists in our time, not influenced by any factors at all, no space, or it's said that it is time in the linear scale. However, it is more a fact of the present moment. So time is not real, it is an illusion. Also, the fact that we can shape shift through different timelines is, in fact, something that many people don't really know how to do, or they may be familiar with the concept of it, or realize that they have accessed these abilities from the past but haven't been able to re-enter that space. So basically, here on Earth right now, we have many timelines coexisting. So these timelines can include things like the current pandemic, the technology timeline, the media. There's all these different timelines available for us. And we can also adapt or connect to different timelines that aren't necessarily quite common, or they're not necessarily advertised, or they're not adopted by many people. So basically, my point is we can shapeshift through different timelines, and we can do this by pretty much being conscious of the particular timeline that we want to engage in or exit. So basically, I'll give you a few examples of different timelines that you can jump in and out of. So we have the current pandemic timeline. Once you become conscious that it is an illusion and that it is literally like a man-made timeline that is constantly changing and constantly adjusting according to a linear time scale, you can exit and enter that timeline. The way that we do this is becoming conscious. Now, becoming conscious to this certain timeline means that you acknowledge the fact that it is a man-made timeline. Once you can acknowledge this, you can exit that timeline at any point. In our physical reality, it is the base point for any timeline to exist. So the only timeline that is organic to Earth and the timeline that no one can tamper with is nature. And everyone sort of refers to that as the Gaia Matrix. So regardless of if we exist or if animals exist or anyone else, it pretty much can exist without anyone sort of inputting any energy into it, or, as such. So basically, any other timeline that exists here on Earth is pretty much artificial, as it is man-made. And what I mean by man-made, it is literally energy being input into that timeline. So, for example, the current pandemic timeline, there is energy being input to sustain that timeline. So basically, there needs to be tools and resources used to facilitate the progression of that timeline. And as we can see, the media is used as a tool to advance that timeline. Once we become really aware of these things, we can consciously enter and exit that timeline. So we can consciously watch the news, we can consciously hear about others' experiences, but then we can also exit that as well, and we can acknowledge that, that timeline is literally man-made or artificial. So we can exit that, and we can then say to ourselves, this is man-made, this is not sustained by Gaia, this is literally co-created by humans. There's input energy and clearly an output, but the output isn't for us, it is for the persons who are creating that timeline. And that goes for any timeline, really. So even the technology timeline as well. There needs to be an input into technology to advance the technology and for it to coexist in our reality as well. If there's no one inputting energy into creating technology, then the technology timeline can't exist. And I think once we become conscious of this, I think we can consciously enter and exit different timelines. But that goes for anything really. Like there's so many different timelines available. And the ones that we are unconscious to are the ones that we sort of get hijacked into. So I use the word hijacked as I see it like as if it's literally a car getting hijacked. Like pretend there's like so many cars on a freeway going back and forth everywhere. And then what happens is once our car gets hijacked, it gets hijacked by a certain, resource or tool that is used to sustain a certain timeline. So it could be the media, it could be anything. So once the car is hijacked, then pretty much that person can't move anywhere and they're stuck on that timeline. So, for example, if someone is constantly watching the media and getting absorbed by the tools used to sustain that pandemic timeline, it's like that person will eventually get hijacked on that timeline and they won't be able to exit it consciously because they have just fallen so deep into that tool that's being used to sustain that timeline. And it's more like that analogy I just used about the cars getting hijacked on the freeway. It's similar to that. And I think that once you get hijacked, it's very hard to come out of that timeline. Very difficult. Unless you sort of get help from the timeline internally, then it's sort of very difficult to exit. And basically, I feel like that's sort of happening here on Earth right now. There is a lot of timelines playing out, however, they all are collapsing to one. And we are living in the now moment. And I think that with the current timeline of the pandemic, it is at the focal point of all the timelines. So no matter which timeline you are on, it is like, so no matter which timeline you are on, whether you exit or enter that timeline or, you're unsure of which timeline to enter, there is always a base timeline to enter. And that is the current pandemic timeline. Reason being is because it is physically manifested into our reality, into the earth reality. We can see it everywhere, people abiding by the restrictions, by wearing masks, by, all of that stuff. So it's just really about people sustaining that timeline and making it coexist in our reality. And back to what I was saying, the focal point is similar to the now moment. It is where multiple timelines can exist. And because we are in a different place at the moment in the world and the cosmos and, entering into 5D, all of that, it's like we are basically in control of what timelines we want to enter and exit. So I'll just make that clear. We can pretty much choose which timelines we want to enter and exit. And there's multiple timelines that we can enter and exit. It's just a matter of finding them. And they're not often spoken about or advertised. So it's very important for us to stay open-minded to that. And then we can access different levels of abundance, different levels of joy and happiness. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about. And I think that with entering and exiting different timelines, it is a form of shape-shifting. And it's a conscious effort as well. Like we can't just enter a certain timeline and then unconsciously exit it. we have to be conscious about our shape shifting in entering and exiting different timelines. And I think that is pretty much the art of shape shifting through timelines. And it's very important that it's sort of like the movie Inception. So Inception pretty much, sorry, one moment, this is a bit bright. Okay, there we go. So Inception accesses different layers of consciousness. And as we go deeper into consciousness, it is more the unconscious layers that we uncover. So it is pretty much the same concept with these timelines. The unconscious timelines are the ones that we don't really have the ability to exit as quickly. And that is shown in Inception as well. Like as we go deeper and deeper into the timelines that are the unconscious timelines, it is like time gets warped and it gets longer and longer and longer. So the longer we stay unconscious to a timeline or cannot exit a certain timeline, the longer and longer time will appear. However, when we are more conscious, we can enter and exit timelines a lot quicker. So the experience seems a lot more shorter in length because we can consciously enter and exit. And that's pretty much like the dream sort of state. But I won't delve into that side of things yet because I think that is a bit too in-depth and I might need some more time to record a video that talks about dreams and entering and exiting dreams and what they mean and what they signify with timelines and earth timelines and all of that. But I thought I'd just share my story on shape-shifting and timelines. I think it's of great significance at the moment. We are at wonderful times on Earth. Our cosmos is beaming with light, and it's shedding and it's shining so much light on the darkness currently here on Earth, allowing people to see those timelines, become conscious of them, and to enter and exit them at their own will. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with engaging with a certain timeline, even if it is the pandemic timeline. We are beings of this earth experiencing this current reality that is playing out, that's being manifested, and there's being energy input into that timeline for a reason, because the collective have chosen that. And the collective may be sort of trapped or hijacked, as I said before, on that timeline. However, as time progresses, we will realize soon that most people will be exiting those timelines as they will become conscious of them. So I think that basically these pandemic timeline will be existing here on Earth for quite some time until the collective become conscious and they decide to exit that timeline. Shapeshift. A lot of people may not realize that they are shapeshifting through different timelines, but it's very common and it's sort of an unconscious skill that most people do have. And then when they do become conscious of it, they, start to question, what is this? How can I jump between different timelines? And, how can I enter and exit different timelines? It's just really a bizarre thing. But, basically it is, a metaphysical phenomena that we all experience here. And it's definitely something that we acknowledge and that can sort of manifest the reality that we live in. So choosing a certain timeline will definitely affect the reality that you live in. And then that also goes for the collective as well. So if the collective is selecting a certain timeline to follow, that is the timeline that will be manifesting in the reality. But like I said, that can change at any moment depending on the collective's consciousness and which timeline they are at and where they will be shape-shifting to next. So exciting time, guys. Looking forward to the next few years. They're going to be filled with lots of love, light, and darkness. So as long as we're conscious to it all, we can always enter and exit and be safe. The universe always holds us in its hands and provides us whatever we need. So sending love and light to everyone. Wishing you well.